Hello, I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this word in your ear, the latest of hundreds of chats Mark Allen and I have had over recent years, some between ourselves and others with musicians, authors, comedians, and other people we like. If you'd like to help make sure they continue, you might consider being a Patreon supporter by visiting patreon.com/wordinyourear, or just by liking or subscribing in whatever way you prefer. On with the show.
Word down your way. Testing 2, 2.
Welcome to another edition and the tremendous news that Bill Bailey is about to set out on an extensive, I'm quoting here, magical musical mystery tour of the human mind along with other pressing matters at London's Haymarket. Bill, that's great news. Lovely to see you. Where are you and how are you?
I'm in my house in West London and I'm very well, thanks. I'm very well. I'm slightly husky of voice. I'm sort of a bit under the weather, and also I was rehearsing with my new band, which is going to be appearing in the show. So yesterday, I was giving it both barrels. That's why I'm a little bit
strange,
a little husky. Yes,
a little hoarse.
But other than that,
the horse forward of the apocalypse. Exactly. Yeah. Well, look, I wanted to talk to you about Thoughtifier a bit later and the tour and what people can expect. I thought it'd be good just to talk about your first memories of live entertainment. I mean, can you remember? Would it have been a pantomime? Did you? Or would it have been a gig or?
I've got various memories. I went with my parents to see a show, some kind of farce in the Theatre Royal in Bath, and one of the I don't remember what it was called, and I don't really remember much about it, other than there was one of the standout performances was James Robertson Justice.
Oh my God!
And
with his sensational beard,
with his fantastic beard and his wonderful moustache. And I remember it. I can't remember being very old, but I do remember there was a moment in the show where he spoke to the audience, and he was in the middle of this. It was I don't know, some kind of farce. Anyway, he just started. He leaned on the sort of the rail of one of the boxes and started to chat to the people in the box, and about something or other. I think he said it was about just prices. He just said, he said, I've heard eggs are going up. Oh, and it left such an impression on me. I thought, wow, he's not supposed to be, what's he doing? He's talking to the audience. This is blowing my mind. And I still think now, when I think about the theatre, I just thought that was, as a kid, you're sort of, you're totally conditioned to think, well, you're watching someone on stage, that it's not real. They're in this performance, and he broke out of that and started to talk to the audience. I thought that was a great moment for me.
That would be, as a child, you just wouldn't understand what was going on.
No,
as an adult, you think it was some kind of irony or it's just clever or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. No, that was great. That was a good moment. And then I went to see a couple of classical concerts when I was a kid, probably in Bristol, maybe at the Colston Hall. And then I remember one of my first, I went to see a few gigs, like music gigs. And I think when I was my mid-teens or something, or 15 or 16, I went to see Genesis in Birmingham. And which was, it was an amazing gig. And then I went to see various bands, like I went to see the Stranglers and Susie and the Banshees and The Cure.
The Stranglers were pretty impressive, weren't they? I remember seeing them very early on.
Really,
Jean-Jacques Bonnel, really charismatic with his eye makeup and his leather jacket and his karate moves.
Amazing. And they were brilliant musicians, and they were kind of unique, really, I think, in terms of that era. because the songs, you know, they were quite musically complex, a lot of them, quite ambitious, you know, like Golden Brown, you know, with its sort of interesting time signature, you know, and it's a lot of that album, you know, was again quite musically interesting. And I remember though, but when I went to see them, it was at a gig in Bath, and they'd just come from a European tour where they'd been, I think they'd been deported or something. Something had gone wrong. Anyway, they had this. There was a febrile atmosphere in this crowd, and there was skinheads. I mean, this is a sort of thing I try and tell my son about. That they were the skins. That was a thing. That was like a tribe, and they would all chant like Nazi slogans, and it was like, you know. And so I remember vividly being in the crowd, and there was these skinheads, and somebody gave a Nazi salute, and Jean-Jacques Bonnel took his bass off and whacked the guy around the head with his bass. It was mayhem. Absolute chaos ensued. The gig stopped, the security came in, it was police. I mean, it was fantastically exciting. And that was around about 1980, 1981. And then many, many years later, I was doing Buzzcocks, and Jean-Jacques Bonnel was a guest, and he was on my team on Buzzcocks. And I said to him, I said, last time I saw you, you were whacking this bloke around the head with your bass. Because he said, I remember it. He goes, I remember it like it was yesterday. He said the bloke gave a Nazi salute. I wasn't having that. And it was wonderful.
That would have been electrifying. So punk rock would have been quite. I'm trying to think how old you would have been at the time. You were born in 1965, was it? So you would have been about
65, yeah,
15 or something, yeah.
So I was 15 or 16, yeah.
And this was all mostly you were around you were near Keynsham, wasn't it? I think near Bath or whatever.
Keynsham is between Bristol and Bath. So I sort of divided time between Bath and Bristol. So Bristol had probably the, bigger venues. There was the Locarno, there was the Colston Hall. That's where you go and see bands. I saw OMD, and I always saw The Cure, Susie, the Buzzcocks, Undertones. I saw Blancmange there. I mean, remember them?
They were great, Blancmange.
Brilliant band. And then
Neil Arthur, I remember them vividly.
Yeah,
with that great kind of 80s hair going up.
Yeah, and what a great single that was. Living on the Ceiling, no more room up there. I mean, it was fantastically 80s. But yeah, and there were bands that were performing Bath as well. And then the little clubs in Bath. There was a club called the Moles Club in Bath, and I saw Flock of Seagulls there.
Oh yeah,
I saw
more vertical hair.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of hair going on.
Yeah,
I saw King Crimson there.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so
Susie was quite a spectacle in the early days.
Yeah,
really an amazing amount of theatre for very little movement, as it were. She just had incredible presence and charisma.
Yeah, very much so. And I do think that, like, listening back to, I mean, it's one of the go-tos of when I sometimes use it as pre-show music. I like to listen to it a lot, but some of those songs like Spellbound and are amazingly atmospheric, kind of musically quite unique, really, in a way, from that era. So yeah, that was a
fantastic version of Interlude with Morrissey. Did you ever hear that?
Oh yeah,
amazing duet. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Was there anybody you saw around that time that made you think, I want to do this? I want to be on stage with an electric guitar.
Yeah. I mean, I think
in particular.
I think in terms of like bands. I mean, I loved watching those kind of guitar bands, like punk bands. I just thought there's so much energy.
Give me some examples.
Oh, like the Undertones. We went to see them in the Colston Hall, and it was just, and we got told off for dancing in the aisles. We got up, and then all the the St. John ambulance people were going, sit down, you're going to do yourself an injury. It was like they couldn't cope with punk. It was like, but in terms of comedy,
you think they've been quite pleased that people have been doing themselves an injury? That's surely the reason you're there, mate.
Exactly. That's
work creation scheme.
Yeah. I remember going to see an artist called John Hegley, and John Hegley,
I need my glasses to find my glasses. Was it the Popticians?
That's right, the Popticians.
Yeah,
and he was so totally different and so intense. His performance was so funny, and he was so acerbic and kind of quirky and funny and totally unique. And he had his glasses and his suit on, and he was playing the mandolin of all things, and doing these kind of short, pithy songs, and this kind of very dry, sort of sarcastic kind of monologue between the two. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is, this is what I want to do. And I remember it was at a gig called the Earth Exchange, which was on the Archway Road in North London. And it sounds like a sitcom. It was like a vegan anarchist commune or something. It was like, you'd think then some sitcom writers made it up, but that's what it was. And there was a sort of vegetarian or restaurant. I think it probably vegetarian rather than vegan at the time. There's a veggie restaurant in the back, and then in the front there was a little performance area, and loads of artists played there, loads of comics. And I thought, this is what I want to do. From that moment on, I thought, if I can do this, I think, firstly, I looked at it, I thought, I could do that. I think I could probably do that. I could probably write some songs. I could probably perform in that way. But that was a real moment, a light bulb moment.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So, and how did you go about that then? So, how did you start getting yourself up with a?
What happened was me and a mate from school, we set up a comedy club in Bath, and we basically we'd done a gig in Mole's Club, and that had gone quite well. So we set up a regular monthly gig in a club under the Arches in Bath, called the Cactus Club.
Yeah.
And every month we would have comics who were actually established comics and on the circuit. Plus, we had a kind of a gong show type of thing in the show where people could come out and try something out, and then they'd either get gonged off or they'd win, and it was absolutely brilliant. And we kind of made it up ourselves, and it had that sort of punk ethic to it. Like, we just thought, well, we'll just do it. We'll put this club on. We'll make this happen. And it was a good learning curve, I think. About the nature of comedy, what works, and actually also taking a bit of a risk on yourself. I think that's what it taught me, was that you have to take a punt. You can't be too timid about it. You have to be bold about it and bet on yourself and just go for it. And something about that almost that recklessness, that kind of, it sort of gives you a kind of momentum. It gives you impetus, I think. And I think that's what really I got from that. And after we ran that club for a while, that's when I realized, there's potential here. There's potentially more gigs. We can play different places. We can write different songs. We can create a bit of a better act. We can, you know what I mean? Like the possibilities that came from that really was sort of almost like, the sky's the limit.
So give me an example of the kind of routines you were doing first off.
Well, we would, me and this mate from school. I mean, I had an electric guitar, and we would do sort of pastiches of songs. So we did a pastiche of Romeo and Juliet. The Dire Straits song. When it's all very sort of lovely and romantic in the song. And this was basically a bloke drunk coming back from the pub, getting his girlfriend to truck the keys down. It was sort of, you know what I mean? Like that was the kind of thing we did. And, with little musical gags, like an introduction, like a blues introduction, as you would get to Sweet Home Chicago. They goes, and it just went on and on and on and on. And it was like this endless introduction that never really went anywhere. And that became a running gag. And then we had, all sorts of things, that were just daft little word gags, word play. And this guy who I worked with, Toby, who was in my school, he was like a beanpole. And so he didn't really weigh anything. So I figured out I could pick him up and spin him round. So occasionally we just do daft stuff like that. I put the guitar down, I'd pick him up and spin him right round, and he would do something upside down, and I'd pick him up again. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing, is the honest answer. We were just throwing everything at it and seeing what would work. And
was there any of that? Was there any of that echoing anything that you were interested in when you were young? Because I can remember you reading things you talking about, Morecambe and Wise and the Two Ronnies and stuff, but also really like Les Dawson, I think, and Billy Connolly. So was it something of their? They were both had musical elements in there. Les Dawson had that brilliant thing with the piano. Yeah,
well, exactly. I mean, Les Dawson was a very accomplished pianist. I mean, and that was one of the great sort of almost the unexpected delights of his act was the fact that he had this wonderfully deadpan kind of style of humor, but also he was a brilliant pianist, and he could make things sound like it had gone terribly wrong. But you need to know what you're doing in order for that to work, and he was brilliant at that. And that was very much an early influence on me. I just thought this is something I've not seen before. And we'd all watch the Two Ronnies, and we'd all watch Morecambe and Wise. Also, I remember vividly sitting down with a family watching Victor Borge.
Oh, yeah.
And he was this, American-Danish comic pianist who again was completely unique, and he incorporated classical music into his act. And he would muck around with props, like he would sit down at the piano, and then there'd be a safety belt on his piano stool, and he would kind of clip himself into. And I mean, things like that, I just think left a long and lasting impression on me.
They're really funny. We must talk about the Thoughtifier tour, which you're doing. I mean, long time Bill Bailey watchers would want to know that there might possibly be a reprise of your Billy Bragg impersonation or your fabulous impression of the Edge of U2 when he has a catastrophic equipment failure. I don't suppose there's any chance of those being in there.
Well, I mean, I never say never. I mean, they're not. It's not something that's in this particular show. But the thing is, when I was on tour in Australia, and prior to that, I was on tour in Europe, and there was in one. I remember I was doing a gig in The Hague or something like that, and somebody said, "Do it to Billy Bragg," and I was like, "All right then." And so it kind of it happened. So it comes out. It might happen as an encore. Who knows?
That's brilliant. So is there a theme to it, the Thoughtifier tour? So what? Just give us some idea what the theme is.
Well, basically, I think that the name of the tour is like a conflation of two things, which is thought and amplifier. So it's amplified thought, really, and that's I love to make up these words, these kind of portmanteau words where there's two different aspects to it. And then I thought that's what comics do. We take ideas and you amplify them for comic effect. I sort of thought that's the description of a comedian, is a Thoughtifier. I've invented my own description. But the idea of the show came from the sort of panic around AI and how it's going to somehow replace us all. And this show is very much a rebuttal of that. And where I just say, it isn't. It's not all that. And plus, humans are far more complex and contradictory and brilliant that you can't replicate what we can do. And I demonstrate that by by, getting involved, audiences to sing in harmony. I get them to play rhythm. I get them to sort of be involved a little bit in the show. And then I play, there's a lot of songs in it, a lot of music in it. And there's a lot of tales of travels and being on tour in Europe and the kind of, extraordinary experiences I've had over the years. Plus, I've got a lot of tech in this show. I've got a laser harp.
Laser harp. Tell me about the laser harp.
The laser harp.
Classic rave fusion.
Yeah. I mean, not since Jean-Michel Jarre played the Docklands has there been a laser harp employed on a London stage. And it's an amazing piece of kit. And it's taken me, honestly, about a year to really wrangle it properly. And it's one laser that then refracted into 12 beams. And each beam is then assigned to a sound created by music generation software. And then as you put your hand through the beam of the laser, it triggers the sound. So if you can, it's like you're playing a harp.
It's like a theremin or something, isn't it?
Yeah. In a similar way, but with the laser, you can actually, you can see the beam, you put your hand, you break the beam, and that's what triggers the sound. So you can actually play tunes with it as a harp. And it's a fascinating thing. It's so difficult to play because there's no black or white notes. It's just beams of light. So you've got no reference. So you have to memorize the whole thing. It's like a sense memory to play the bloody thing.
But presumably, if you put your hand in one particular place, you're going to get a particular sound or note.
Yeah, right? That's right.
So it's like an invisible keyboard.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like a bit of choreography more than anything. And I use that to play in the show. I've got I basically play some tracks from Kraftwerk's Lost album, which is their album of children's songs. So Kraftwerk play Wheels on the Bus.
Oh yeah, because you did Hokey Cokey before, didn't you? Which was
That's
great.
Right. Yeah.
Superb. Oh, that's wonderful. Brilliant. And are you there's some talk of electronic drum balls, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're basically, they're called oddballs, and they're basically, they're about the size of a cricket ball, but they're soft. And they have a sensor in them, and it is, you connect it to an app on your phone via Bluetooth. Yeah. And then you can just basically, if you bounce this ball, it triggers a drum sound. So it's a great way of getting an audience to get involved and to play drum beats. So I actually I've got 3 people in the audience to play a drum riff or a drum beat with a hi-hat and a kick drum and a snare. And it's brilliant to sort of the point I'm trying to make is that we all inherently have these skills. We have the ability to sing. We have the ability to sing in harmony. We can all hold a tune. We can all have rhythm. Everyone has some ability to do this. And I think that's what, partly it sort of feeds into the idea that we're not going to be, taken over by our AI overlords anytime soon. But we all have this ability to do these things. And I think that's, again, it's kind of democratizing music. It's getting people to get involved in the show. And you can see people getting delighted to be able to play this, to be part of something. And I get loads
So you actually get these people up on stage?
No, I do. Well, they stay in their seats, but I just chuck them a ball.
Oh, that's
and I
brilliant.
Go, hit that, and you've got a bass drum. Oh, here's another one. That's a snare drum. Here's a hi-hat. All right. And then these 3 people, presume sometimes, they're all strangers. Sometimes you get a couple will get involved. And suddenly there's a drum beat happening, and they're like, you can see this just delight, like, wow, shit, how is this happening?
So I love that. Brilliant.
I love to do that with crowds.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you still do your, you used to do a thing about Packa Bell's Canon.
Yeah.
Are you still doing that as part of it? I think it was just explain that, because I think it's really interesting, because there's all these millions of songs that were written based around the same chord sequence, wasn't it?
That's right. Well, again, that's part of the, my sort of, there's a section of the show where I talk about the fact that TikTok is changing the way that music is written. Yeah. Because the algorithm requires music, the song to be shorter and less complex, because they've figured out that people's attention span is so short now that there's no time for the traditional verse chorus.
That's right. We did a thing on our podcast recently about the fact that people don't write bridges anymore.
They don't. There's no middle eight. There's no middle eight. There's none of that. That's the thing of the past, a long introduction, none of that. It has to happen straight away. The song has to come hit straight away.
Every single bit of it has to hit, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what that means is there's new artists are having to tailor what they write to a sort of, to basically pander to the means of delivery, i.e. TikTok. And I think that's a real shame. And I say a lot of this music is eminently forgettable. It's almost been machine tooled to fit into our phones and the attention span that is now severely sort of foreshortened. And I said, here's a piece of music that was written in the 16th century, but you will know it. You will be able to hum it. And then I play it. And then, of course, everyone knows I know this. Somehow it's seeped into the culture. There's so many songs
I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, there
All Together Now by The Farm.
All Together Now.
Streets of London by Ralph
Streets
McTell.
of London. No Woman, No Cry.
No Woman, Don't Look Back in Anger.
There's a Green Day song, Don't Look Back in Anger. There's also Maroon 5, Memories.
Yeah.
All of these use
I think there's a Kylie Minogue. I think it's maybe I should be so lucky or something like that. I mean, you can literally sing all of those songs over the same chord sequence.
All of those songs fit over this chord sequence, which was, the amazing thing about it was that he wrote masses and masses and masses of music, Johann Pachelbel, and none of it has survived apart from this, because he somehow had this moment of, I don't know, great inspiration, and the chords that he wrote just have endured over the centuries and have inspired countless other classical music, pop music, rock music for centuries. And so I sort of I demonstrate all that, and I also use the fact that the bass line, there's a bass in Pachelbel's canon called the ostinato bass, which is a kind of a sort of repetitive bass, and that if you take out the repetitive bass, it's the basis of all disco music. It's like the disco bass. This is basically what has been the kind of the foundation for so much dance music. So you can't quantify its influence over the centuries.
It's fantastic, I think. So a lot of what you're doing also is about the idea of celebrating flawed human characteristics too, as against the age of machinery, as it were.
Yeah,
is that right?
I think yes, definitely. I think so, and I think that's what I think what makes us human is really what the show is about our own mortality, it's our own fragility, our own maddening, contradictory nature of humans, the kind of crazy thoughts that we have, the stuff that's going through our minds, but the fact that we have this capacity to think about a million things. Like, we can think about the universe, we can think about, is there life after death? And then we can also think about, should I have ham or cheese? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can think of profound and the banal in the same second, and that's our that's what I find fascinating about people and about humanity, and the fact that AI is just a sort of, it can only come from us, whatever we will, whatever we do, it's only it's a pale imitation of. So yeah, it's very much it's as much as I can get in there while maintaining a high joke rate. that's basically it,
And it must be good doing it in the same place, but you're not touring, so you're doing it in the same venue, the Haymarket Theatre. I can't remember, I think it's 42 nights, which is pretty. So it must be nice to be able to go back there and just refine it every time, because you're in the same place with the same gear and the same.
Totally.
space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of touring this year. I mean, I've been to 20 countries this year. So, you know, and living out of a suitcase for a lot of it. And so being able to sleep in my own bed, you know, it's great.
Brilliant.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Bill, it's great to talk to you. And I mean, we should say it starts, I think, on the 28th of December. It's quite soon, just after Christmas, I think.
That's right. 28th, and it goes through to mid-February. So I'll be there for a while.
Well, that sounds absolutely enthralling. That's brilliant. Lovely to talk to you.